Hello everybody, good morning with all. Thank you for staying in this specific meeting. Today we are going to talk about regarding to the section 4.2, the project development approach. In this specific session, we are going to talk about regarding to the predictive approach, adaptive approach, and hybrid approach. In this specific, in the introduction of this part, um, the PMBOK, the version 8, explain what is a development approach. A development approach usually is in order how to create the project will be management and executed. For that reason, there exist three commonly used approaches: predictive, adaptive, and hybrid. If you can see here, you can understand with this specific figure, you can understand very well what about regarding to this specific kind of development approaches. Because you have a predict approach when you have a clear scope. You have an additive approach when you don't have any kind of idea regarding what about the scope. You are building the scope during the project. And you have an hybrid scope. You have an hybrid approach. In that case, in the next section, you can find the specific information in order to understand a little bit more this specific part. When you see them here, the main factors that play a role in the choice of the project are related with the requirements, scope, timelines, and the goals of the projects. And when the requirements require something clear, as I told you before, is a predictive approach. What is less clear in the early in the project is adaptive approach, and you can mix it in an hybrid approach when you have a 50-50% of each one of this kind of approach. But this kind of pictures, you can identify what about regarding to when you have a fixed scope. When you have a fixed scope, you have a variable budget, a variable schedule. And when you have a fixed budget and a fixed schedule, you have a variable scope. This is very common because currently when you define the project, you don't have all the information. And you are building according to the early stage, you have more input from all the stakeholders. In that case, in this specific part, in the section 4.1, in this predictive approach, explain a little more because as we talked before, when the project scope has been established early in the project, all the rules change. This specific develop approach has a robust change control mechanism and a planner regulation. For that reason, you can see here the sample predicted life cycle. You have the facility, design, build, check, transfer, and close. This is predictive because you have an early and clear scope. This is another kind of example of this kind of predictive approach because you have to plan the same and build, plan the same and build, and plan the same and build, and then close it. It is very common when you have to develop many kinds of part of the specific product, and you have to develop many projects in order to obtain the final product. In this specific part, you can identify the difference with the adaptive approach. What is the main difference from the adaptive approach? As we talked before, you don't have a clear scope. In that case, you have to build the scope during each one of the interactions that you have during the project lifecycle. In that case, for example, you have high level of insertability and you have change scenery throughout the project. For that reason, you have one interaction and you recover the feedback, the backlog presentation, then another and the feedback, and another and the feedback. This is adaptive. You are adapting according to this kind of methodology. One of that is the flow-based schedule. When a project management approach that focuses on optimizing the flow of work or throughout the system. It's very useful from people who work in IT projects. And for that reason, you can find here the term of work in progress. Work in progress, and you work, develop, and progress. Work and develop. For that reason, is adapted. What more have in this specific part is we have to understand the difference in between large scale modes and large scale tools. A method is a system way of doing something, typically involving a series of procedures to design and to achieve a specific outcome. On another hand, you have a toolkit. It's a collection of tools, technique, and resource. This is a clear example. For example, the project management discipline Agile. Agile is a toolkit. It's a toolkit because they contain tools, they contain techniques, and they contain resources. It's not a methodology. That is the difference, and check it. Very important because it's Agile. From one side is the methodology. PMP Discipline Agile is a tool. In this specific part, you can find, for example, in design projects, you have partial deliveries and change are expected during the project. When you have a new product development, you have the final features to the project are refined constantly. And when you are working in digital project, you have a certain and you need early or incremental delivery. Final, we have the hybrid approach. This specific hybrid approach is very interesting because it's more real, especially in the utility project, because for one side you can obtain adaptive until you have a clear scope, and then you will continue on a predictive uh, approach because you have a clear path in order to implement this kind of projects. You always have this specific method, adaptive predictive, because you are pick up the inputs and complete and start to follow one specific process. For example, in here you have the distribution project. For another hand, you have the substation project and you have the transmission project. When you have in here clear the process, you have to adapt all the information, all the scope that you need to build this specific predictive scenario. Finally, you can find here all another things that according to the PMP discipline Agile, you have three levels of every hybrid approach. In level 1, when the predictive approach is the domain. Level 2, when it is 50% predict, 50% adaptive. And level 3, when it is more adaptive process. You can find here, this is level 1, this is level 3. Because you have in here more predictive and less adaptive. You have more adaptive and less predictive is level 3. A 50-50 like this is level 2. With these guys, is all that I can share today. I hope you can find a good information and don't forget that you can write me, you can send me an email, you can take for a phone call if you need it, in order we can support all of these kind of things. And thank you so much for seeing my videos and see you soon. Bye bye.